So much ground have we covered. Wow. I think it's been a number of very interesting presentations, and most of you, or all of you, I would say, are giving very optimistic pictures about the future of how technology can revolutionize and make society better in so many ways. But at the same time, of course, there are risks. I think the one who pointed out mostly was Mats, probably. The risk for companies, but there is also, of course, the risk for the digital divide. We talk about how IT also can help the rural populations and the underprivileged and so on. But at the same time, we do see the gap is growing. So. Who would like to reflect on the risk side a little bit more, and how do we overcome that so we can put the risks aside and focus on the opportunities next? Someone? Yes? Anu?
I can start and others can also add their perspectives. But I think one of the biggest risks is, of course, on jobs and what it means for the future of work and for workers. And this is a risk all over the world. It's not unique to India or Sweden. You can run various numbers. I think Mats mentioned some rather frightening ones. But it's true that as MGI, we looked at this question in the US context, and what we found is that the impact of digital in the US for middle skill workers, so not the low skill and not necessarily the high skill, but the middle skill whose job content is so automatable, can be such that about maybe 13 to 15% of them can actually be displaced in the period of 10 to 15 years. So I think that's true, but I also think, as with many other areas, in India we actually have limited legacy issues and less to lose. The fact that a lot of our labor force is anyway in low productivity jobs and quite unorganized makes, on balance, many of these technologies actually very helpful to them. We are not talking about large labor forces with secure jobs which will just vanish because of technology. We're talking about people who are hungry for opportunity, and therefore, on balance, we think it's actually very good in India, at least.
Mats, you wanted to reflect as well.
I started to point out the risk.
Yeah.
I think all of you read the Oxford reports, right? They made it to the headline everywhere. By 2025, 47% of all jobs risk to be automated or disappear. And I think some of you have read that in Sweden, as we are very much an industry country, it means 52%, right? So of course, technology could be a threat against the jobs we have today. But the biggest risk of them all, I think, is not to embrace the change as a nation, right? Because if you look back, some of you might remember, when the Industrial Revolution started with a engine, with a steam engine, to be clear, right? Which what was coming up with. And what it did was that it gave, call it, predictable, massive power at our service when we needed it. So suddenly, instead of having us with our muscles and animals solving this problem, we had a machine who could do that. And suddenly you went from agricultural to an industry where you used machines for the muscle job, and it was much more efficient. Now if we think about the computers can do a lot of things better than us. And I think most of you have heard about IBM's Deep Blue, right, who was beating Kasparov in chess. But you also probably know that the one who is the world champion today in free chess is not a computer anymore. It is a team of computers and people, because it's when they cooperate, they beat the computers. So what I try to say is that if a computer is better than us to structure data, to search stuff, let it have all this boring bureaucratic admin job, and let us be creative people instead. That would free us up and would create a lot of other jobs instead. Think about it, if all of us instead were focused on creativity. How much better wouldn't the world be then? So I think we shouldn't be afraid of it, but we need to embrace it and we need to prepare ourselves, because it is about education, competence, and as you say, the digital divide is absolutely a big risk, but that's what we need to work with. Because I think we shouldn't be afraid of losing the boring jobs. But we should not forget that we need to create the new jobs, and the only way to do that is with competent people.
And of course, I think we have to discuss what these changes mean, because they will influence society in so many different aspects. But you are all in the let's say in the space of embracing the new technologies. So, but several of you also pointed out to the challenges to existing to traditional industries in doing that, in embracing technology, in accelerating their own transformation. Is enough happening, or how can that process be accelerated? Yes?
Mats highlighted very much that you need to have a passion for what's happening, and you need to embrace this in a very much way. And for established incumbent companies, they're seeing some of these changes coming, hopefully, but there are some barriers for them to adopt this new way of thinking, adopt the utilization of technology and seeing the opportunities. And that's everyone is looking at these born digital companies because they do it so fantastically. Yeah. But we're also seeing these established companies like Ericsson, like GE, that actually have managed to go from a traditional type of manufacturing company into a digital company, basically. So there are good companies that made this shift, but it's very much, I would say, a mindset. Yep.
Just to build on that comment, we've seen a lot happening over the past 2 to 3 years in that area. I think there are many, particularly manufacturing companies who've been manufacturing a pump for 100 years and selling it as a product, and then suddenly they realize that they can sell it as a service, and that is, of course, a big change. But now it's up on the board level and on the management level, and I think, I mean, the way Combient has structured it, it's really, it's very clear that it's a key priority, and now things are starting to happen. But there are many, hurdles to overcome, not to mention the security issues and, a lot of things that needs to be overcome before we have the really big impact of this.
Yeah.
So, in one simple word, technology today is not a limitation. It is the adoption, which is he very rightly pointed out.
Yeah.
And that is what is making the difference. And there is where things like, how to make things better adopted by the people is something that is the gap that needs to be filled up. And there's a huge plethora of people required for making up for that gap. And that is what is something which will change the whole world. And the moment traditional companies start adopting the new technologies and embracing new technologies is when the difference would, when we can say the digital has actually arrived.
Mm.
I think the key part is actually getting at the strategic level. So what we did 8 years ago is that we took the professor at Harvard coined the disruptive innovation term, Clayton Christensen. We put him in the board of TCS probably 8 years ago, and his role is to drive, because we are subject for disruptive innovation ourselves, but actually doing the measurement and cultural change to adopt to this adopt to this, etc. Start up in ecosystem programs, doing the R&D labs and these things. And I think companies need to do that much more. And they are right now. I think in the last 1 to 3 years, we've seen that in most companies actually taking it to that strategic level.
Mm. One of the challenges in many growing economies, and not least in India, is something that you have not talked about. It's corruption, and corruption is very effectively met with transparency, and transparency is intimately connected to connectivity and digitalization. How do you see, let's say, opportunities for getting rid of corruption and thereby accelerating business and progress in India? Anyone who would like to comment on that?
That's definitely having a big impact in India in various citizen services, which was out of reach for a lot of people due to the fact that you have to grease people. And now, because of technology and the solutions that come with it, which we are also implementing, in various services, that is completely eliminated, and that has brought the transparency and the ease for a lot of people, and I think that will be the way going forward in other services too. So in India, definitely it's making a big impact. It's coming slowly, so a lot of people are scared of it, that they will be caught because of this, and their earnings are getting. So that will be the hurdle that certain things don't get implemented. Other than that, I think it's a big thing to go digital for India, specifically regarding corruption.
Yeah, yeah. Anna?
I think what it's also doing, what the technologies on the personal or consumer side are also doing, it's reshaping citizens' expectations of what experience they should have and what they can demand, what they have the right to. Earlier it was more, of course there were barriers around cost and being able to do it, but there were also barriers around the willingness to do this.
Yeah.
Now that willingness barrier is increasingly breaking down because people find that, even somebody in a rural area finds it very easy to navigate using a phone and doesn't see why you can't get that level of service. So it's a very empowering device from a demand perspective as well.
Yeah. So in that sense, building trust in society. Would you say
building
that?
trust, and I think building trust is, where we will get to.
Yeah.
We are in the process, I think, of renegotiating the contract of expectations that citizens have vis-a-vis governments. Right? That's what's happening.
And just to add, I think this is just the beginning when it comes to what it can do there, because as you say, just by actually deploying IT, you take away a lot of the problems. But if you look into the technology which is coming with blockchain and so on, where you have trust, smart contracts, and it's traceable, then suddenly you don't need a middleman anymore.
No.
So suddenly, we can take it to a much higher level than it is today. So I think for sure that IT will be and are a way to take away the corruption.
Yeah.